I'm Douglas Mason, CEO of Naturally Splendid, symbol NSP on the TSX Venture Exchange. Naturally Splendid is a biotechnology and consumer products company focused on the global cannabis and health markets. Naturally Splendid is expanding distribution in this rapidly growing market with products currently in Canada, the USA, South Korea, Germany, and Australia. To view our comprehensive company presentation and for more information, please visit our website at naturallysplendid.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sharon Noble, BC Director of the Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. Welcome back to the show, Sharon.
Thank you so very much, Jim.
Sharon, what kind of risk are children facing in their classrooms from all these microwaves flying around all over the place?
The risks are very high, and they're multiple. As we've discussed before, Jim, hundreds of studies show that children are especially vulnerable to the microwave radiation that Wi-Fi and cell phones and various wireless devices emit. Of course, most of our concerns so far have been around the various diseases that cause, and especially cancer. And cancer is a significant risk. But more and more, people are becoming aware of the fact that other risks include neurological problems and behavioral problems. And there have been studies and reports lately that suicides, even in very young children, are increasing. Children as young as 5 and 6 and 7 years old are attempting suicide. And in schools, teachers are reporting violent behavior, bizarre behavior. And this sort of activity was so rare before. You know, it would be very, very unusual for a teacher to see a child behave so erratically and in uncontrolled manners toward themselves, toward other children, and especially toward the teachers. But teachers are now reporting that this is virtually commonplace. And it seems to be happening even in children as young as 5 and 6 years old. The studies are multiple, and they do show that erratic behavior like this can be caused by prolonged exposure to microwave radiation. And we all know that these children are exposed all day long while they're in schools. Almost every school now has Wi-Fi modems in every classroom. And these young bodies and these young brains are being exposed to this constantly. And many of the studies are showing that it's the pulsation and the modulation of the wireless modems, the transmitters and the cell phones, the laptops, the smartphones that are in every classroom now that is causing this. Our bodies just are not able to handle it. One of our members, who has a blog for Parents for Safe Schools, did an amazing job of putting together quite a few articles about this bizarre behavior in school, reporting that teachers are complaining that it is basically uncontrollable. And many teachers now are quitting the profession because they just can't put up with this constant stress. And she also gathered quite a few studies that clearly outline that this sort of erratic behavior is consistent with the studies that are showing up.
Now, of course, people might blame social media. I mean, I just saw a story about some little young Syrian girl committing suicide. They say she was bullied, but could this be an influence on her as well?
Of course it could be. It could be. But many of these children that are very, very young probably aren't exposed to that sort of pressure. You have to look at the physical aspect of it. The bullying and the social behavior, of course, is something that is terrible. And if they didn't have access to cell phones in schools so much, perhaps this wouldn't happen quite as frequently. The pressure is terrible on children in so many ways. many schools in California and in other countries now are starting to insist that cell phones be left at the door because of the fact that, first of all, children are devoting too much attention to things like their cell phones and their smartphones and not paying attention to their studies. But also during schools, bullies are able to terrorize other children with this means. It's not a one-dimensional sort of thing, as you point out, Jim. There are many factors here. But one of the prime factors, for sure, is the fact that neurological changes are happening. Look at people, for instance, on airplanes. We've been hearing over the last few years about people becoming violent on airplanes, attacking stewardesses, threatening pilots, acting bizarrely toward other passengers. This is something that's very unusual. It used to be attributed to drinking. Now that there's no free liquor on board, that's not quite as common. And many of these people can't explain why they are acting this way. Wi-Fi is something that we have to consider as a very possible cause of these bizarre behaviors.
Sharon, with the schools gathering up cell phones in some places, would that mean the kids are exposed to less microwave radiation during the day?
Sure. When you've got multiple cell phones and smartphones in a small area, that certainly increases the exposure to microwave radiation. But they're still being exposed to all of the other radiation that's coming from, versus the Wi-Fi modems and from the smart boards and from the laptops. There are many, many sources of wireless radiation in a classroom today, and most of these are completely unnecessary. Most schoolrooms or most schools have access to fiber optic cable. It was there long before the schools went wireless. And for some reason or other, pressure from the industry, perhaps some financial incentives, schools have, by and large, stopped using fiber optic cable, even though it's faster and much, much more efficient and safer. There's no reason for Wi-Fi in schools, except that it allows kids to move around with their wireless devices more easily. They could be wired, the devices could be wired, and the children's work environment every day of a school year could be made much safer.
We'll have more with Sharon Noble right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia, Saskatchewan, and the Yukon. Trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the pink symbol ABN-AF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, Recycling Trade Publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sharon Noble. Sharon, what is the 5G Day of Action and when does it happen?
This is a day of action that's being called internationally by a group called a grassroots group called the Americans for Safe Technology, and it's May 15th. People are asking for people to show their concern, whether it's due to health, whether it's due to cybersecurity, whether it's just due to the fact that you don't want your public right-of-ways to be taken over by telecoms. They're asking for people to go before your telecoms, or in our case, I believe, before TELUS, to express your concern and your dismay about this happening. They're calling for people to picket, to have rallies outside offices. And we're calling for people in British Columbia to organize in your local area to meet outside TELUS offices to draw attention to the fact that TELUS is putting microcells in neighborhoods. These are cell transmitters outside homes, just feet from homes. And the transmitters will be emitting, if they aren't already, high levels of radiation of all sorts of frequencies, with the ultimate goal, we believe, to emit 5G milliwave transmitter emissions. These are emissions that no one has ever seen before except in military weapons. And the concern is great. These things are going to be uncontrolled, unregulated, and the telecommunications industry basically are trying to get around all the local regulations. When they had to have cell towers, the high macro cell towers, put where they are now, many of them in residential areas near schools and hospitals, which are atrocious, they at least had to go through some sort of negotiations, or at least notifications of people living and working in the area. But when they are putting them along right-of-ways in our communities, they're getting around this because they're putting them on poles that are already there. And Industry Canada, formerly Industry Canada, is now ISED, has a policy saying that if the transmitter is put on an existing structure, no consultation, no notification is required. This is outrageous, and people need to get out there and have their voices heard. Also, TELUS is partnering with a Chinese company, Huawei, which is partnering in all levels of the grid, not only the microcells in the development and the placement, but in the development of the grid. And fears are that this will allow for increased vulnerability, for hacking, for access to our data, and ultimately for control of the grid, turning it off perhaps. So this is May 15th, and we're hoping that people will participate. If people would like to organize in their communities, if they don't have a way of communicating with people in their communities, send me an email at dsnoble@shaw.ca, and I will publicize it in our updates and let people know. Right now, Jim, people around the world are starting to become more aware of what is happening and are calling a halt. There are people in Portland, Oregon, in Florence, Italy, in Rome, in Russia, Belgium, Germany, Switzerland, who are saying, we've had enough. We do not want this increase in microwave radiation in our neighborhoods, especially since there are so many scientific studies that are showing that the level already is dangerously high. The proliferation of transmitters throughout our neighborhoods, and there will be thousands and thousands of them, just feet from homes and hospitals and schools, will increase the level of radiation dramatically. Scientists are warning that not only human health, but the pollinators, foliage, everything is to the point now where the levels of radiation are already dangerous, and increase of these 5G antennas will make our world virtually uninhabitable. And to boot, there's been approval for thousands of satellites to be put up in space, shooting 5G signals every place. We won't be able to escape it. Our homes will no longer be our refuge. People who are sensitive will no longer be able to go out into deserts and mountains to try to escape this. We have to put a stop to this, Jim. It is completely out of hand already, and it's getting worse. And it's all for the sake of profit. There's no other reason for it. And many people are hypothesizing, experts are hypothesizing, that the real reason for these microgrids that are being built really is to allow the telecommunications industry to bypass all of the regulations. There's no other reason for it.
We'll have more with Sharon Noble right after the break.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sharon Noble. Sharon, are there concerns about the security of the smart meters installed in BC?
Yes, there are. In March, there was a report released by the Auditor General about the BC Hydro's care and safety with their grid. The conclusion that was reached was, as far as the regulatory aspects are concerned, Hydro seems to be doing an okay job. But where the smaller, unregulated aspects, for instance, smart meters are concerned, it's way behind. There is very, very poor cybersecurity that has been put in place. We know that there's very little, if any, cybersecurity for the smart meters, and many of the cyber experts have warned that smart meters are the most vulnerable part of the electrical grid as far as hacking or accident are concerned. And they're warning that the hacking that's occurring right now is kind of feeling its way into the grid. There are many attacks that are just kind of testing. And the belief is that countries like China could attack the North American grid and cause chaos. We saw what's happened here in British Columbia when a storm takes down the grid for just a few days. But if some country or some military or some accident occurs that brings the grid down permanently, just imagine what could happen. And the Auditor General is warning, has said that the hydro cybersecurity is very, very poor at this level and that action needs to be taken. This is going to take a lot of money, and we don't have it. Hydro doesn't have this money. This is one of the major steps that should have been taken right from the very beginning if this grid was going to be going through. And we connect with grids throughout North America. And if our grid goes down, or if grids down in California, for instance, goes down because of it's been attacked, we've got no way of protecting ourselves. We are highly vulnerable.
Sharon, is there a conflict of interest with the federal government auctioning off the microwave spectrum?
Yes, Jim, there certainly is. And, so many times people have asked me, and I've wondered myself, why would Health Canada ignore all the science that's out there? Why would they allow the telecommunications industry to expose the public to all of these wireless devices, to these cell towers, to put cell phones out there that without any warnings, except in tiny print in their manuals? But when you think about it, it's very clear. The federal government makes billions of dollars for selling off sections of the spectrum or for selling off licenses to the telecommunications industry. And one major auction started on March 25th and has just been finished, and the country made billions of dollars from various companies, with Rogers and TELUS being among them, buying access to just one tiny section to the 600 megahertz range of the spectrum. Now, this is going to be used for the new 5G technology. It's a part of the spectrum that they can use to send signals through buildings and for many miles. And they've paid Industry Canada ISED. I keep forgetting the new name. It's, Innovation, Science, Education, and Development. What a bizarre name. And they sell off licenses. For instance, last year, they sold hundreds of licenses and made billions of dollars to new telecoms. And now, they sell off spectrum regularly. And each time they make billions of dollars. This, in my mind, explains why the federal government is allowing this to happen to us. They're making billions and billions of dollars off of it.
Sharon, is there new research showing the dangers of all these microwaves flying around?
There's lots of new research that's been going on, especially over the last 5 years, that Health Canada is completely ignoring. And a scientist, a researcher, a very famous one, Dr. Panagopoulos down in Greece, recently wrote a report trying to summarize it. And he was saying that the studies are showing that biologically, even small exposure levels for short durations are even more biologically harmful than they thought in the past. And it's more biologically harmful than exposure to many things that are already known to be toxins, whether they're chemicals, whether it's things like dehydration or starvation. It's more damaging to our cellular structures, especially to children's. And it's believed it's because the microwave radiation is now so highly pulsed and modulated. The data is being sent, and this requires high level of pulsing and a new structure that is only in man-made radiation, like our smart meters and the Wi-Fi. It is pulsing, sending out signals every few seconds or milliseconds, and is modulating over many, many portions of the spectrum. And this is putting constant stress on our DNA cells and our cells. The cell walls are breaking, they're being permeated, the brain barrier is weakened. There's the body of science now is showing that without doubt, these microwave radiation exposures are extremely dangerous. And we have to demand through our voices, we have to join our collective voices together, because the science is being ignored by Health Canada, by our politicians, and the risk is so great. Even our schools are not paying attention to this. And the time is there. The time is now, Jim. If we don't stop it now, it's going to be too late. The damage is going to be overwhelming, and our children are suffering. Many scientists are saying that if we don't stop it now, within the next 3 to 5 generations, the harm will be irreversible, especially to the fertility of future generations.
Do you think this might be some kind of conspiracy thing by the elite to try to control the population?
They're exposed to it too. The elite cannot escape it either. This is what's so bewildering. They're making billions and billions of dollars off this by putting satellites in the air, by putting microcells everywhere, by putting Wi-Fi hotspots everywhere. There's virtually no city that you can go into now where the level of radiation isn't so high that it becomes almost impossible for many people to even go into the city. And they're exposed. These elites and their children are being exposed. No, I don't know if it's a conspiracy. Many people say it is. But if it is, it seems like a strange one to me, because everybody is going to suffer.
Sharon, are there any websites people can go to find out more information about this?
There are many websites, and we're trying to make them accessible on ours, which is www.stopsmartmetersbc.com. And I hope that people will go there, look at my updates, because it's under newsletters, and there's so much information there for people to be able to read about.
Sharon, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Jim.
My guest has been Sharon Noble, Director of the BC Coalition to Stop Smart Meters. If you have any questions for Sharon or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet, our YouTube channel, Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of How Street Media Incorporated.